This BizNews Briefing is brought to you by Investec Business Banking. Make the move from business as usual to Investec Business Banking. Hello, it's the 29th, Tuesday the 29th of April. Had to have a look at my watch there to remember what day it was. Wow, with all of these public holidays, it really has been very disruptive to the business environment. When, oh when, are our government going to realize that every day that you allow us all to go on holiday means one less day of contribution to the economy? Man, I don't want to buy into this anymore. I've had enough holiday. Come on, let's get on with turning this country around. Well, the drama that's been infesting the airwaves and our brains over the past 2 months now, since the budget, which should have been delivered in February, wasn't. And it's been staggering along with the VAT debacle, where those who were dancing and singing that the VAT was going to be increased by 0.5% are now all claiming credit for it not happening. Hey, what a strange world we live in. But I spoke about that and other issues with Dawie Roodt. He's the chief economist of the Efficient Group. And let's just start off with what should happen after the debacle, and the very costly debacle at that, of the VAT that was first going to go up by 2%, then go up by 0.5%, and now, thank heavens, is not going to. Here's Dawie.
I think the Minister of Finance, I think Ntlaningeshe Ndwala is probably the best that the ANC can offer. And I don't think he was really such, I think he's an okay Minister of Finance. He understands what's going on. But I think the financial market lost confidence in him, certainly. And I think the damage that was caused by the ANC, and I don't think they've got a mandate anymore. I think because do we have a solid government in place? And we certainly do not, because the ANC is waiting for the DA to leave, and the DA is waiting for the ANC to kick them out. That's basically where we are at the moment. It seems to me as if they're trying to patch things up. And the coalition part of the ANC voted against the budget, for example. Now, you can't call this a stable political environment. It's certainly not. So maybe they should get in a fresh mandate, and maybe we should go to the polls again.
And that mandate would either be the ANC getting smashed at the polls, according to what we're seeing on the opinion polls that have been published, for instance, by the Social Research Foundation and the IRR, or it would mean a turnaround for the ANC. They get back above 50%, and then they can do what they want.
It's unlikely that they will get above 50%, but I've read the same polls. I think that the ANC will certainly keep on losing. It seems to me the other winners are likely to be the MK and EFF and the DA. Those will be the major winners. But and again, referring to Frans Cronje's stats, his research, it seems to me as if the majority of South Africans actually like the coalition. Or let me put it differently, it seems to me of the majority of South Africans like a political combination, roughly what we have currently. In other words, something between the DA and the ANC, somewhere there. And in fact, I think there's a bit of a vacuum there. There's the possibility of a new, fresh political party perhaps taking up that space. But something in between the DA and ANC, that seems to me as where most South Africans like government to be.
So Dawie suggests that the Minister of Finance has lost confidence in the financial market. He should resign. And he also suggests, as you heard, that the ANC should call a new election so that we know where we are. Well, neither of those things are likely to happen. And that also means that the urgently required restructuring of the economy is also unlikely to happen. Well, primarily because the beneficiaries of the system, and these are those who are well entrenched as cushy jobs in the public sector. Remember, they've just been granted a 5.5% increase at a time when the economy is got an inflation rate of about 3%. So a very juicy, real terms rise at a time when most people can't get jobs or are losing jobs. So what's going to happen? Well, Dawie says that we're just going to slide more and more towards a situation that one day a shock will hit us and we'll be less and less prepared to resist it. What then?
If we keep on doing this, the following scenario is likely to play itself out. One day we're going to see the bond market bombing out. The bond market is there to keep everybody on a straight and narrow. Even Donald Trump is scared of the bond market. So one day we're going to wake up and we're going to see bond yields go to 15%, 20%, 25%, something that the yields on that. If that happens, the rands will also weaken. Pick a number. I don't know where it's going to go to. 20 rand, 25 rand or whatever. That will immediately spill over to a negative impact on the financial markets, especially the banks. The financial the stocks will take a huge knock on that because they are very closely linked to the capital market. So the banks' prices will fall, and insurance prices will fall, and other equity prices will fall as well. And all of us will suddenly feel much, much poorer, and we will stop spending in the economy. Demand will disappear out of the economy. The Reserve Bank will have to increase interest rates because petrol price will double overnight because of the much weaker currency and things like. And then the economy is going to go into a tailspin, much, much weaker economic growth and everything that goes with that. Negative recession, a deep recession, and all the bad things that go with that. So that's what we are heading for if we don't turn this fiscal ship around. And there's only one way to do things that we must do. We must put measures in place to get this economy to grow faster, but that means an ideological change. And the second thing that we must do, the state must spend less. Really. And eventually the financial markets will force us to do this. See what Javier Milei is doing in Argentina. That's exactly what he's doing. He's cutting state spending because we need, the markets are forcing him to do that. And rather do it while you still are more or less in charge than wait for the financial markets to force you to do it.
Interesting point that, because it's exactly what Elon Musk is doing on behalf of the Trump administration with the whole Doge initiative. America has also been overspending. It's also got too much money that is going to public servants, and he's trying to rectify it, as Dawie was saying, while they still can, rather than when they are forced to do so. So lots of excellent messages there. That full interview is on BizNews TV. Something else that you will find on BizNews today is the interview that I conducted in 2016 with the late Errol Kruger. Errol passed away over the weekend rather suddenly. He appeared to be in pretty good health. He's well known for having been the registrar of banks for 8 years, during which time it was ahead of and during the global financial crisis of 2007-2008. Kruger gets a lot of the credit for South Africa coming out of the global financial crisis in good shape. And in fact, unlike many countries around the world where the banks had to be bailed out. We had a breakfast in 2016. In fact, we kept in touch for much of the past decade. While he was around in South Africa, he came back in 2016. And this discussion that we had was just ahead of his return to the country, where he took over as a director of Nedbank and as the chairman of Nedbank Wealth. He was also the chair of 3 of the group committees of the Nedbank Group. He's going to be a huge loss to Nedbank and indeed to the country. One of those unsung heroes. Here's a short clip from our conversation back in 2016.
I had been registrar for 8 years, and I think it was very clear to me that we had been through all the issues that needed to be done, and it is time sometimes for people to actually move on, for fresh thinking to come. And I think the most important issue was we were at a very important juncture that, with Basel III just beginning to surface, it was a good time for a fresh pair of eyes to take over and to then take it forward in the next phase. So yes, I had announced my retirement from the Reserve Bank, and it was after that that I was then approached by the Qatar Financial Centre Regulatory Authority to have a look at revamping their regulatory framework.
Just take us through a little bit of your background. You spent nearly 3 decades at in serving the country through the Reserve Bank. You come from Pretoria. What took you into that line of work in the first place? And perhaps more importantly, why did you stay?
I finished my articles in Pretoria. I studied part-time at the University of Pretoria, And in fact, the bank, the Reserve Bank, subsidized my studies, and I just felt the loyalty to them. That was in the immediate period after having finished my studies, but it was very clearly the opportunities which it was granting me from a career perspective, the intellectual challenge. I think I was very fortunate to be given opportunities at various junctures in my career in the Reserve Bank, which excited me and kept me absolutely intellectually stimulated. And also one felt that one was really making a contribution to broader society in what we were achieving.
That was Errol Kruger. He was 67. Over the weekend, one of the diary dates for many in the BizNews tribe is the Sunday show where my colleague Chris Steyn hosts Neil de Beer of the UIM. They had a cracker again over the weekend. By this morning, more than 100,000 people had watched their conversation. We're going to pick up a couple of clips. First of all, on Neil's views regarding the visit of the Ukrainian president to South Africa.
While President Cyril Ramaphosa is still president, he held that meeting with Ukraine's Zelensky, also called Russian President Vladimir Putin. Is he trying to emerge as the peacemaker here instead of Trump?
Sorry, Chris. Jy weet seker goed dis maar net woord toe, nee. What the hell is Suki Cyril Cupcake going to have an influence on probably two of the greatest powers in the world, being Russia and being America? And then the people say, maar hy het 'n telefoonoproep gehad en miskien, maybe Cyril could be the answer. Luister gou vir my. Hey, Cyril couldn't even keep peace in the GNU. Inteendeel, he can't even keep his NEC together. So what the hell is he going to do to cause a 5 or 10 year current war situation to now come in and say, nee, ek sal dit uitsorteer. Rubbish. Absolute rubbish. So I'm sorry, Chris, he might have called Putin, but it was for a bottle of vodka. It was definitely not to ask him to surrender. So I think that is a fallacy. It is his network, his people trying to put up this big show that, you know, Cyril is a peacemaker because he was that at Kodesa. And I'll tell you something. If you look at many of the people that were in those negotiations and the people that were there, the ANC clearly lost. I think that the National Party and Rolf Meyer clapped the ANC at such a rate that they didn't get much, and that's why we're struggling today. So no, Cyril is definitely not a Mandela, and he cannot, at this current moment, claim to be anything. But you know what, Chris? Hoe vinnig het hierdie ouetjie in en uitgekom? I must tell you, Chris, it's like a bar of sunlight soap, and you put it underneath the tap, and dan maak jy so. Nee, boop, weg. Listen, he landed, middag, whoop, he's back. And he said the reason why he's got to go back that early is because Russia is bombing them again. Chris, I don't know. I don't know if this was orchestrated. I don't know if it was done that way. I think it was, to get this guy to land and to get him the hell out. I think that was the ideology, because what did you see? What did we experience? What major tours, what major influence did his visit actually do except to land, coffee, a bietjie bladjang, cheese en nyama, terug is jy. And that's worrying that we have got such a scenario of window dressing happening in this country. They're taking the South African citizens' IQ to a level where they can never aspire. Also, Sidomi, we know what they do.
Well, apparently the president has also called Trump, and the two are due to meet soon. What do you think a meeting like that will achieve, Neil?
That's like summoning your dad to a coffee meeting. Old school. It doesn't happen. You don't summon your dad. Your dad summons you. And even if you are the one asking to see him, you make him feel like he called you. This is the exact same of Cyril Ramaphosa. Cyril Ramaphosa, let me tell you, Chris, has no impact, has no credibility with a person like Donald Trump. And not because Trump trumps him on anything else, except that there's a difference between Donald Trump and Cyril Ramaphosa. Do you know what it is? Trump's got balls. Cyril's got none. Hy threw seintjies. So I'm sorry, this isn't going to work.
And I would wait for that day, and I'll probably have a double brandy and Oros on that day and swallow my words. That's my opinion.
Met eis, nee, Neil, met eis. He also gave some thoughts on the idea that Rolf Meyer will become the next South African ambassador to the United States.
Now, there is speculation that the next US ambassador from South Africa could be a white Afrikaner, and President Cyril Ramaphosa's old friend, former apartheid minister Rolf Meyer's name has come up. Now, as you will recall, those two were dubbed R and R at the CODESA negotiations. Do you think they are up for another round of R&R?
Ja, R&R, rot and rumble. Chris, firstly, here we go back again. Ek wil net dit duidelik stel. Op record. You know, on Thursday, while we were supposedly on a break, I had the opportunity as a United Independent Movement Councillor of the City of Cape Town to do a rip-roaring speech. Chris, it's gone over 300,000 already. And what made it so fascinating is I decided, to befoozle the ANC, which doesn't take much. It's just a trip to the kitchen. Chris, I did my full speech in Afrikaans. By the time that these people could get their translation headphones on, I was already on my way to have a cupcake. Ek het hulle so gemoer. I think they're looking for parking space still today because half of the stuff I said to them in insult, they didn't even recognize. So, Chris, at the end of the day, we must stop thinking that people in this country don't know the truth. And programs like this is to just double check the cherry on the cake. Rolf Meyer? Really? Well then, Chris, my suggestion is that the Springbok team, Rassie, hoor jy, must bring back Ntlaningeshe and Asbota. I mean, really, are we going that far? I mean, why don't we just go dig up Joe Slovo? I mean, at the end of the day, do you really think that if we sent an Afrikaner boereman with biltong, a little bit of bokkums, lekker confit brood, and this guy is going to go, okay, now everything is okay? This is rubbish, Chris. This is stupidity. Donald Trump doesn't care about the color, the language. He doesn't care about your affiliation. He doesn't care. So you can go find die klein seun van 'n gebroke agtergrondse Piet Retief and send him to America. It will make no difference. What is the problem? The problem isn't white. The problem isn't black. The problem is bloody Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas, BRICS. The ICJ court case toe is, moet ons vir hierdie mense 'n vliegtuig kry met 'n banier. Must we now get an aircraft like they do in Cape Town? Apparently it says Mavericks. I don't know what it is. But Chris, replace that banner and say to them, hey, these are the 5 things that you need to recalculate, redo, re-Siri, and then, only then, when you've apologized for the continual problems, foobarrs, and insults, can you then sit down and breathe? And until we don't fix those 5 problems, you can send anybody en masse, and it still won't work, Chris. I think our people are starting to understand that it's got nothing to do with the citizens of South Africa. It's got to do about the absolute absurd Dirko, public relations, international relations, and this president's credibility of not being able to read the room.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And I'm sure Neil knows all about Mavericks. And as in a previous life, those were the kind of organizations that his organization used to look after. Fascinating man, incredible background. There's a book that is on him that his brother, in inverted commas, Brad, wrote. It's well worth reading. Anyway, let's move on. Starlink, Elon Musk's Starlink has been in the news in South Africa for, well, quite some time. Elon says he's not coming here because he refuses to give away 30% to people who are connected to the ANC government in the name of BE. We know that story. We're not stupid as Neil said earlier, ons is nie dom nie. And as a consequence of that, maybe they're going to be holding out for the alternative. It's going to take a while, but Amazon has shot its very first low-level satellites into space. Let's have a look at the story from our partners at Bloomberg.
Another thing that we're watching at this moment is the Amazon Kuiper satellite launch, and this is happening after a nearly 3-week delay. Amazon and United Launch Alliance again preparing to launch that first batch of full-scale satellites of Amazon's Project Kuiper broadband internet network. The launch is now currently happening from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. This is really a part of an effort to catch up with SpaceX's Starlink satellite broadband network. They already have more than 7,000 satellites in orbit and 5 million subscribers. The first attempt for Amazon was scrubbed earlier in the month. We had some weather concerns, but the Project Kuiper broadband internet network is now currently being launched by Amazon and United Launch Alliance from Space Launch Complex 41 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida.
Vehicle is now 1/2 of its liftoff weight. Max Q passing through maximum dynamic pressure. Coming up on SRB burnout. And we have good indication of SRB burnout.
We continue to watch Amazon's Project Kuiper launching a few dozen satellites. We have seen that some of these delays in the launch could have jeopardized their ability to meet that government deadline to have over 1,600 satellites in orbit by next summer, not to mention, of course, that effort to catch up with SpaceX's Starlink satellite broadband network could have also fallen behind. We have seen a slow pace of production combined with rocket launch delays that could mean that Amazon will likely have to seek an extension from the Federal Communications Commission. Right now, this launch happening after a 3-week delay already. Back in April 9th, we had seen the delay first because of weather concerns. Also, range scheduling conflicts forced ULA to wait until now for that next opportunity.
At Sun Exchange, we make going solar simple, profitable, and completely risk-free. Join over 100 satisfied South African customers already enjoying the benefits of risk-free solar. Start saving today. Visit sunexchange.com and join the solar revolution.
In the world of business banking, the bottom line can often triumph over relationships. At Investec, we value both. Make the move from business as usual to Investec Business Banking. Out of the ordinary.
Interesting story, but can you really take someone seriously when they call Kuiper? The story there, though, is that it's a little bit like, imagine somebody invents a cell phone and you in South Africa say, no, we don't want the cell phone. We want you to give 30% to our friends of the company that launches. And then the guys who've invented the cell phone was, oh, that's fine. We'll give it to other people in the world. We don't need to come to South Africa. That's how relevant these low-level satellites are. They are going to give Vodacom and MTN and everybody else who provides fiber networks, broadband fiber networks, a torrid time. And the reason for that is that they're a fraction of the price. And Elon Musk has done that with Starlink. We have colleagues in Malawi who work with us. They don't even have electricity at home, but they use solar panels, a little DIY solar panel, and they are allowed to get Starlink, and their connectivity is as quick, even sometimes quicker than you have in South Africa. So come on, guys, really and truly, do we have to continue along this line of just letting the rest of the world get further and further ahead of an economy that is stagnating and desperately needs to grow? Well, moving on to another big story of the moment, and that is to do with big oil. We know that Sasol share price has been under a lot of pressure. Sasol's profits are directly related to the price of oil in rand terms. Now, the rand has weakened, but the price of oil has just plummeted. Here's the Financial Times of London looking ahead to what big oil results are going to be telling us. And that is in the FT News Briefing program with Mark Filipino.
I don't think I'm telling you anything you don't already know when I say oil is having a terrible time right now. But just how bad is it? Well, big oil is reporting quarterly earnings this week, and the industry is bracing for its worst year since the pandemic. Here to talk to me about it is the FT's energy editor, Malcolm Moore. Malcolm, the worst year since the pandemic?
Well, okay, so let's just step back, and we all remember when the pandemic hit, right, and the planes stopped flying and people stopped driving and the demand for oil just plummeted. And so obviously that was a terrible year. But then after the pandemic, the oil industry actually had some great years, right? You know, when Russia invaded Ukraine, that sent oil prices above $100 a barrel. So they had these windfall years where they made huge profits. But 2022 was the peak. And annual profits for big oil companies have been falling steadily since 2022 as life returned to normal. But now it's not normal anymore. You know, what's going on is basically sending oil prices far lower than we thought they would be this year.
Yeah, I mean, oil's briefly slipped below $60 this month. How did it get this way?
So there were really two things that happened at the same time. The first was Liberation Day. All of these tariffs that the US announced, which really sent the markets, all sorts of markets, into a tailspin, trying to figure out what their effect would be. And for oil, it was more like a secondary effect, which is, okay, if actually these tariffs cause the global economy to slow down substantially, what does that mean for oil demand? And then at the same time, OPEC came out and said it was going to start reintroducing some oil into the market. But the timing was terrible. They said it basically at exactly the same time as the market was falling because people were worried about tariffs, and then that kind of turbocharged it. But what we're expecting to hear from oil companies is what they're going to do about the year ahead. So we're expecting oil companies basically to say, we can cut our costs, we're going to trim our spending a little bit. We're expecting them to hear a little bit more about what they think the world looks like at this sort of price level.
Malcolm, are there any companies in particular that you're keeping a close eye on during earnings season?
If you look across all of the big oil companies, none of them can afford the level of shareholder buybacks and dividends that they've promised just out of cash flow at the current oil price level. But some of them, like Exxon and Shell, have got strong balance sheets and can basically take on a little bit more debt to maintain those dividends. So Shell has said it can continue to pay its dividends all the way down to $40 a barrel oil, which is pretty impressive. They have insulated themselves against the downturn. Other companies, however, already have high levels of debt, and they're going to really struggle. And so analysts are looking to see whether they're going to actually say that they're going to cut or not cut their distributions.
That's the FT's Malcolm Moore. Thanks, Malcolm.
Thanks, Mark.
Well, one of the widely held shares amongst South Africans is the oil from gas producer Sasol. The share price at Sasol is down 50% in the past year, affected by that decline in the oil price. It's down 20% in the past 3 months, and we've added it to the BizNews portfolio. Not at exactly the right time. That would have been a couple of weeks ago when the shares were trading at 54 Rand a share, but they're back up at 65 Rand a share now. And given what the future outlook is for the oil price, i.e. not as bad as we've seen up to this point, perhaps it's time for those who are looking for a long-term investment to be reconsidering Sasol. We certainly think so. And on the strength of what the CEO, Simon Baloyi, had to say at the BizNews conference in March this year, well, I think we're not the only ones who are in that boat. This has been your briefing. I'll be back again tomorrow. Till then, cheerio. This BizNews Briefing is brought to you by Investec Business Banking. Make the move to private banking service now for your business.